Going live. Okay. Hello, Reset Women. This is Lynn-Ann. How are you today? I am the founder of Divine Reset, and I am so excited to be here with you today. This is our inspiration series. This is number 2. We just started this, and we are really excited because Divine Reset, we want to offer women, anybody really, that just wants some happiness in their life. They've got too much stress. They just can't figure out why. There's so much chaos in our lives. And the purpose for Divine Reset is it's for women who are just sick and tired of not being happy. I'll speak for myself. I had health problems. I had really overwhelming feelings of guilt, and my traditional methods weren't working. I was doing all the religious activity I needed to do, prayer and fasting and attending the temple, and I wasn't getting the relief that I needed. And so I had to look at some other alternatives that helped me realize essentially what our topic is today, what my own worth was, and that I was worth the love that my divine can give me. And it totally changed my life. And so I got together with my friend Wendy, I'm Lynn-Ann, and the two of us are on this mission to help women to connect with their divine. And no matter how crazy life is, no matter if relationships are suffering, finances, rebellious kids, health, whatever it is, all of those things, they do not define who you are and your worth. And so that is what Divine Reset is all about. And we've begun this inspiration series every Tuesday. And today we have one of my favorite people. And I wish I knew Chris better. I've only talked to him a handful of times, but I have never forgotten the impact that he's made on me. He has gone through his own journey, and you will see him radiate. He smiles. He is authentic. He helps people. What his work is, his name is Chris Avery. So Chris Avery Coaching, and his work is to help people to get out of the dark places and see the light and impact and influence for good everyone else around them. And that is his mission. And I'm so honored to have him here. And I'm so excited for the topic that he has for us. And so, Chris, thank you so much for giving of your time, being here with us.
Thank you, Lynn-Ann. And I appreciate you inviting me. For me, I just want to share a little bit of my story, and then we'll get to some information that will start to create a powerful impact in your life once you start to take it, write down a few notes, but implement it. Because implementation, I tell this to everybody, information's great, but if you want it to turn to knowledge, you got to apply it in your life. And luckily, like you, I don't know, we met a few years ago at a personal development thing, and we've learned what self-worth is. And for me, for most of my life, my early life, I struggled, and I had sexual abuse, I had physical abuse, mental abuse, and I'm not here to debate which one's worse. I think they're all tremendously bad, and they all impact us in a horrible way. And that took away so much of my self-worth. And there's a thing in the Japanese culture called suji. And so if you look it up, it's a really amazing process, and it's truly meaningful to me. I learned it a few years ago, and it really made an impact along my journey. And so what they do is, most of the time in America, if we break a pot or we break a glass, we throw it away. And so in Japanese culture, though, they don't believe in just discarding something because it's damaged. And so what they do is they pile up the little broken pieces, and they take it to these shops. And this little old lady walks into the shop and she delivers this bag to this gentleman. And he says, come back in a few weeks. It'll be all fixed. And she's like, okay, I'll come back. A few weeks go by and she stops back into the shop and she's excited. And he's like, here you go. And she has this pot that she broke, but now it's all brand new in a sense. It's bonded together. It's still the old broken pieces. But what it is they bond things with gold. They bond things with silver. So it makes them stronger. It makes them more beautiful. And for so long in my life, I thought that physical, mental abuse, and which turned in my teenage and early 20 years to drugs and alcohol abuse. And I just lost all self-worth. I thought all those things in the past is what damages me. It's what destroys my self-worth. It's what makes me feel so bad about myself. And over the journey I've had the last 6-7 years of personal development, I've realized that all the things we go through, all the struggles, all the things that we think tarnish us are actually what make us beautiful. It's what separates us from each other. It's what makes us go, man, this had an impact on my life. Now I can turn and impact somebody else's life. Because, Lynn, you said a huge word, and I think it's one of my favorite words, is impact. I think if we can all harness what the troubles we've gone through, the things we've grown through, and the things we become because of that, and we can realize that actually should give us self-worth, and we can look at it and go, that's what makes us beautiful. That is what allows us to impact other people's lives. And for me, when I started the journey, because I didn't know authenticity, I didn't know self-worth. And when I started that journey, I was just so unclear. And most of us, so we have a program called Success Momentum. It's a 6-call course through video chat, just like this. And one of my biggest things is helping people get clarity. Because I think most of us, we take time to plan our dinners for our families, which is important. We take time to plan our vacations. We don't take time to plan our life. And with Success Momentum, what we do is we give these gaps, we give these opportunities, because you're on a video call for a couple hours in an evening, and we sit down and take that time to explore ourselves, because we don't take the time to explore what we truly need in our life, who we truly are, what we truly want. For me and for most of us, we get shaped by the things that happen to us, the experiences we have. A lot of those experiences that our brain naturally ties to are those negative ones. And I've learned a lot about going to the subconscious mind and learning how to reattach to positive things, to relive those experiences in a different way. That even when they're negative, they build us, they build ourselves work, so they become meaningful. So I think number one, if you're writing down like a list right now and you're watching this and you're listening to us both talk, the number one key is clarity. You got to take that time. And the one reason I started coaching was I realized that I love my family and they love me. However, it's tough sometimes to get a good friend. It's tough sometimes to get a loved one to sit down and give us hard love. Because with Chris Avery coaching, I love to show people their worth, because I usually can see more worth in them than they can see in themselves. Because I know at one point somebody saw more worth in me than I saw in myself. And that's the reason I have self-worth now, is because he helped me along that journey. So what I love about coaching is you can give people the hard truths that your family normally can't give you. So with Success Momentum, we sit down and we help people get clear. We help them take the time. We help them give them the hard love that they need so that they can get clarity and understand what happens inside themselves. And I know, Leanne, and I'm sure you can relate to this, and I would love for you to even comment if you have one. But when we went to Michael Bernoff, I think one of the biggest like single words that's impacted my life and truly empowered me is congruency. And congruency simply means, it's not a word we use very often, but it's a word that is so powerful because it means being in harmony with yourself. And when we go back to the step one of getting clear, see, clarity and congruency go together, because we truly have to dive in deep. And I love to think of our life as like we're an onion. We have these layers. And my goal is to peel back the layers, because the layers are all the hurt, the pain, all the things that have happened to us, and we layer up for protection. We protect ourselves. It's a natural thing. But when we start working together, what we do is we start to pull back the layers, because underneath all those layers, that's on authenticity. That's self-worth. That's clarity. That's who you truly are at your core. And that's where I started to find myself, was I started to understand congruency, and I started to stop worrying about what my wife would need from me, what my parents want me to do, what that person did to me in my past. And I started to realize that it truly was more important for me to understand what I needed for myself. How could I be congruent with the person that I believed I was at my core? And as I learned what I really needed, what I really wanted in my life, I realized that most of the time when I spoke to myself, and I would say, if you're again writing down 1, 2, 3, time, getting clarity, congruency, and how you speak to yourself. And I want to make a clear difference, because I don't think this is spoken on enough. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about, is thinking and thoughts. And most people are like, oh yeah, thinking, thoughts, cool, they're both the same thing. To me, thinking is an active, it's a present thing. And I know, Lynn, I know we'll get together another time and we'll talk about presentness, because it's a wonderful, amazing topic that I feel like instantly impacts your life. But if we can just work on self-talk and how we communicate with ourselves, because that's far more important than how you communicate with somebody else, because we first have to communicate with ourselves in a truly and powerful way that allows us then to speak clear to others. And so if we look and go, okay, thinking thoughts. Thinking is a proactive thing. Thoughts are a reactive thing. Thoughts come from your subconscious mind. So thoughts are all those old experiences, those old programmings that run constantly. Because if we look at our subconscious mind, I'm not going to go too deep into this, get in the weeds, although I love the weeds. 90%, 95% of your choices each day are subconscious. They're subconscious thoughts. So how do we win that game if only really 5 to 10% of your thinking is actually proactive? It's in the present moment. How do we win that game? And the truth of the matter is, we have to start speaking to ourselves with our thinking, which slowly reprograms our thoughts. And then what happens is, if we reprogram those thoughts, now 95% of our thoughts are starting to relive amazing experiences, starting to engage positive memories, incredible self-worth thoughts about ourselves, that having the tie to what we're congruent on, what our authenticity is. Because when we can start to reform our thoughts, that's when the game and the momentum starts to build in our life. That's when we truly start to see impact and transformation in people's lives. Because, like I said, thinking is where it starts. But the key is to reprogram our thoughts, because those are reactive things. Those are happening in our mind all the time we're not even aware of. Where thinking is something we're aware of, and it's something that we're being present to, and it's something we're interacting with right away, right now. So I think those are two huge differences that have impacted my life in an amazing way. Do you have any questions or thoughts so far? I know I've kind of got going here, so I want to take a second and ask if you have any questions or thoughts so far.
Okay. You had some really, really good stuff. And I mean, I'll start with the last things. I didn't really think about thoughts and thinking in that way, where, yeah, your thoughts often are from your past and what you've habitually programmed.
Yeah, well said.
Where thinking is your active steps, like the present, what you can do today, your hopes and dreams. So that was really cool. I really thought about it that way.
Good. I'm glad you like that. I always think it's fun because most people are like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I want to go back to what you were talking about. So I know this is true for for all people, but because we are talking about women, that's the purpose for our page.
For sure.
And for this movement, it seems that women, we have a lot on our shoulders. We tend to think we can do it all, and we multitask and we serve. We rarely put ourselves first. And you said something about making dinner, and the thought of what you're going to have for dinner. And Chris, I remember so much of my early years as a mother was all about my family, all about them. That was my purpose. And so as you were talking, I was thinking about the word purpose. And yes, it's great to have a purpose. And it was good stuff that I was doing. It was wonderful stuff. But the purpose wasn't me. The purpose was actually never me.
Definitely.
And so now, and I've been married 26 years, my oldest is 25, the youngest is 15. A couple of years ago, when my kids are getting older and they don't really need me as much, they're doing their own thing. That really, the word purpose is really, as you've been talking, that has stuck in my mind, because I have been, I didn't have the self-worth. I didn't have the authenticity because the purpose was not me. I wasn't part of the equation,
For sure.
part of that picture. So, yeah. Another thing that you were saying, Chris, because women do have so much going on in their lives and it's easy to forget about themselves and their own worth, I would like to know, if you don't mind, could you share what it was? If you were talking to the women right now that are struggling with their self-worth, could you tell them what the words are that you use as you're speaking to someone who is really struggling with their self-worth?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. So are you asking like how I would help them start to reprogram their brain, or like what I would say to myself to build self-worth? Is that kind of what you're going at?
Well, let's take it back a step. So you mentioned there was one person that made a huge difference for you.
Definitely.
Will you tell me what that person said? Was it words? Was it actions?
I can use the words. Some of them are naughty words. But so he asked me, I'll use the edited version. He said, it's time to take your life serious. And when he said that, and then he said one other thing, which I'll tell you in a second, but so when he said it's time to take your life serious, it was a nice way of saying, are you taking your life serious? Mm-hmm. Are you loving yourself and respecting yourself enough to take the time to take your life serious? Because it's easy, like you said, to get caught up in all these other things. And like you said, I'm not a mother, I'm not a woman, but I see so many, and really like 95% of my clients and friends, they're women. They're women that I deal with and work with. And so when you look at that, what he was saying to me is, love yourself enough, because you're not doing the things that you should be doing to show respect to yourself, to show yourself that you're worth something. And that made a huge impact on me. And that was where I said the hard love, because he could have said nicer words to me. He could have came at me like my family did. And I love my family. They're tremendously incredible people. But the way he said it and the way he was a little over the top with it, it made me go home. And it wasn't that moment. It went home and I thought about it. And I realized, man, he was reading me so clearly. He could see through me. I was transparent to him. So that was just one thing that he said to me. And it really made me go home and question what I was doing with my life, what I was spending my time doing. And was I really doing the things that showed me I love myself? and that I care about myself. And you said, like, sometimes it's easy to get caught up with all those other things that are inside that picture. And now you're the person looking at the picture opposed to actually being in the picture. And I think that's a huge lesson to bettering our lives, to living presently, is because I see so many parents that I work with, and they have this thing where it's like they were doing this, they were working with their kids, and their kids were everything. And, and then their kids move away and they lose a piece. And sometimes I feel I started to understand, even along my journey, is that we get attached to these things and we think these things are us, right? Like, for instance, I used to say, like, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drinker, like, I'm this, I'm that. And I realized at that core of that onion, I'm none of those things. And I love that you use the word divine, because that is truly meaningful, is we have at our central core something that is far greater than anything we can attach ourselves to. And I don't know if that answered your question, but that's one of the things he said to me in a little firmer way, but that's what he said to me that started to really start to switch those gears in my mind.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I wanted to know. And, thankfully at that moment, it touched you.
For sure. And luckily he cared, because he could have cared more about himself and me liking him, and he could have said something really gentle. But instead, he cared more about me caring about myself. So he said something that could have even damaged the relationship. But at least it gave me an opportunity to go home and question what I was doing so I could have a better life. And I think that's so meaningful when I say sometimes I care about the person more than they care about themselves, because sometimes you have to say that hard thing to somebody, because then that actually shows, like, hey, I'm okay with you not liking me right now. I say that to most of my clients. You may not like me at points, but what I hope to give you is something that you can take home where you can like yourself. You can love yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I think that learning, like, the third thing is learning how to speak to yourself is so important. And as we go through, and in Success Momentum, we go through most of these steps and we really break them down. We dive deep into them. And I think the last thing is really helping yourself get a vision of your future. For most of us, it's easy for those thoughts, because those thoughts have been around for a long time, that we attach to the past. I think it's super important, and the most important, to live in the present, because that's really the only time it exists. It's the only time you're thinking about your thoughts is from the present moment. The only time you think about your future is from your present moment. So you're really thinking about your thoughts really from now. You're not thinking about the past actually at all. You're thinking about your thoughts in the past right now. And so I think it's so important to create a vision of your future, because it's so easy to get caught up in, man, I had these kids, I had these things going on in my life, I had this marriage, and it's gone. But I think it's super important to gain hope in our life, is to start to create that vision of our future. And
love it.
And to realize that everything we need is inside us, right? It's the vision. And you said, like, this purpose, and we have these kids. And I think it's so important to understand that we have to practice progress over perfection. Like, there is no perfection in life. We can't even measure that, but we can progress, and we can have this vision of where we want to head, and we can set small goals, because when I set small goals for myself and I started to achieve them, I started to build harmony and congruency with myself, and I started to build my self-worth. Those small goals, step-by-step progression, and having that vision of where I was headed, it allowed me to set those goals, allowed me to build that congruency with myself and build that self-worth. And I just think those are some of the tips that I could give anybody that would make to, if they start to implement today, once they get off this video, once they started implementing them, they'll start to see true progression, true self-worth develop in their life.
Thank you so much.
You're
You're
welcome.
so gifted. I'm
Thank you.
so glad you are where you are. I'm glad you're alive.
I appreciate it. I'm grateful I'm alive too. I went through a lot, so there could have been times where that didn't happen, but I was blessed.
Yeah, and you have an awesome wife.
I
awesome
do. She's
future
incredible.
ahead. You guys have so much fun. I see your posts and just loving life. That's it.
She's definitely the better half. I always say, I said to her, and I posted it the other day, but when we first got together, I said, she's not perfect. She's just perfect for me. And, she's definitely my yin to the yang. So.
Yeah, that is so awesome. Thank you so much for your messages. I took a lot of notes. I
Good.
always learn whenever I hear you, and even being in your presence, you just have something very special, Chris.
Thank you. I appreciate it. The
Thank
feeling is
you.
mutual.
Well, thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
let me know if I can help anybody in the future. Like I said, we have a success momentum course that we run. We have several other courses, but if I can be of service to you or anybody that is working with you, please let me know.
I will. All
All
right.
right.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. And
Thank
Divine
you.
Reset Women, give a shout out, a virtual shout out to Chris Avery with Chris Avery Coaching. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.